Hey everybody, Mark here. Thanks so much for joining us today on this really fun episode of the Menlo Midweek podcast. We have Matt and Josh on, as well as a live studio audience for reals this time. So if you'd like to join us down here on Tuesdays as we're recording this, we'd love to extend that invitation to you, whether that's just watching along, or if you want to get more involved helping us edit or produce or record these podcasts as well. We'd love to have you. You don't need any experience required, but you will need a heart for God to say, yes, I want to help make a difference in those that are listening in the Bay Area and beyond. We've gotten some great feedbacks of the encouragement and the tools and tips that this is giving people that are listening with how to approach some of the harder things in life, how to read the Bible better, or even how to have conversations with friends and coworkers at work that don't know Jesus yet. And so if you would like to make this ministry your ministry, we want you to do that as well. So we'd love to invite you to do that. We record on Tuesday mornings and would love to have you whenever you're available. So we recognize that we can't do what we're doing here with Online without your help, whether that's your time or giving in your generosity there. We honestly can't do anything in this ministry without your support. So thank you so much for joining us, and let's get into this week's Menlo Midweek. Welcome, everybody, to the Menlo Midweek podcast. My name is Mark.
My name is Jessica.
We have two guests with us today. Woo-hoo. We have Matt Summers.
Hey there.
I saw the wheels spinning trying to think of a clever nickname.
Do you have one?
You're just used to Rochelle being here.
I know.
Rochelle's better half.
Rochelle's better half. Yep, Rochelle Summers' husband. And we also have Kristen's husband, Joshua.
Right.
There you go.
That's right. Yeah. Hey.
So Joshua Horton is here. Why don't you introduce yourselves? Tell us about your campus and what you do there.
Yeah. So Josh Jewell-Horton, Director of Student Ministry at our Menlo Park campus. So I work with middle school and high school. I've been here like almost 2 years or so.
That was a confident answer.
I was like, is that accurate? Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah.
Menlo years are like dog years.
Yeah.
Truly.
Especially if you're here during COVID.
Yes, that too.
Definitely.
My name is Matt Summers. I am the campus pastor at Menlo Church Mountain View by way of Menlo Church Online, by way of Menlo Church South City. And I have been here coming up. It's going to be 4 years in February.
Wow.
Feels like a really long time.
That feels too short for you and too long for you. I was looking at Matt when I said too short and Josh when I said too long.
Wait.
Note for the audio.
Yeah.
And why do we have two guests this weekend?
Because we had teaching at each campus to kick off our Christmas at the Movie series.
Yes.
Which was awesome.
So fun.
Yeah.
But before Christmas, let's give a little bit more space to Thanksgiving.
Before Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
let's give a little space to Mark's birthday.
That was the thing that happened.
In fact, let's go back to summer.
Let's might as well. Let's keep going. And if we're going there, let's go back to my birthday.
That's right.
It all comes around.
It all comes
Yes.
to Jess's birthday.
Thank you.
Yes. But thank you everyone for the birthday wishes. It was
Did you have a
great.
good birthday?
I had a great birthday.
What'd you do?
I woke up in Slow, which was just
Nice.
beautiful. At a little bed and breakfast there, where Missy felt like she was living her best Gilmore Girls life.
Cool.
And it was also my birthday that day, so that was great. Got some coffee, drove down to LA after that to see my parents, and then just hung out. We had an awesome dinner where my brother and my dad went out the week before and caught lobster. So we had some fresh lobster tail for dinner. It was such a treat. I haven't had lobster in, I don't know, ever, maybe.
So good.
It was fantastic. So
Can I ask you a lobster question real quick?
asking the wrong guy, but sure.
I just need to know.
Let's hear what happens.
Because it's my understanding that
Yeah.
on the West Coast, the lobsters don't have claws.
Right.
Okay.
We have the California spiny lobsters.
Yes.
They don't. They got
They
little
don't have the
hands.
claws.
They don't have the big claws.
So East Coast guy here, I'm like almost exclusively a claw man. Like when
Like
we,
in your consumption or
Yeah.
just in your fan?
Well, that's your new title.
a little
The
bit.
claw
I'm a
man.
claw man.
There's not a claw. I
Call-
don't want
if
it.
this was Inspector
Okay.
Gadget, I would be Dr. Claw. Like that's how much I
Oh my
love claws.
gosh.
Thank you.
The lobster rolls I've had, they've been all hot claw meat with hot drawn butter on them. So out here, what do they do on the West Coast? It's mostly just chopped tail and then
It's all tail.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. I'm gonna have to try it at some point. I have not tried West Coast lobster.
Yeah.
I don't know where a good spot to get it is.
Half Moon Bay.
Probably.
Well,
Well,
yeah,
they're
I
not-
guess.
Yeah. They're more known. No, I
Yeah.
guess that's north. Yeah.
I don't know anything about lobster.
That was Lobster Corner.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mark and Matt.
Thank you.
Now
Jonas.
out of the lobster shack and back into
Back to Thanksgiving.
back to Thanksgiving. How was your Thanksgiving, Matt?
Really good.
Good.
Yeah, we took a drive out of town for the days leading up to Thanksgiving on that Tuesday, and we went to Universal Studios for the first time ever, which was
best.
great. And I had grown up, watching all the great Nickelodeon shows as a kid, so I'm like, I'm finally here. Well, Universal under the umbrella. I think they filmed it in Orlando, but you still feel like you're there when you're in Hollywood. And it was incredible. We had a really good time. Kids had a great time. We did pay for early access to go to Super Nintendo World, and I would 10 out of 10 recommend that if you intend on going there, because it's not very big. And it does get crazy, but it's totally worth it. So
I'm going for New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
I'm so
you
excited.
will
I haven't been
love
to
it.
Mario World yet.
It's great.
You sent me that video. I didn't watch it because I didn't want it to be spoiled.
You don't want to spoil it.
I was
Yes,
like, I just want to know.
Yeah. And then we drove back and had Friendsgiving at a dear friend's house, and she just cooks up an entire feast and does not allow us to bring any food or any sides. And she just hosts, and it's wonderful. It's really wonderful.
That's great.
Yeah, so it was a good week for us.
Yeah. How was yours?
It's great. I have two brothers and their wives and kids who live in Birmingham, Alabama. So I went out to Birmingham, and what my wife and I did, and it was awesome. Just got to be Uncle Josh and Aunt Kristen for the week,
fun.
and
That's great.
yeah, they're at a sweet age where they just like have so much personality, and so we took some of the boys fishing. We did lots of. I mean, it was just so good. Did a tea party for my niece's birthday, and I was a server with a French accent. I wore a suit and
Very
held a little
nice.
towel. It was awesome.
Feels
They
like you're-
will remember Uncle Josh doing that for a
Yep.
very long time, if not their entire lives. That's awesome.
Yeah. Later, my mom asked if they liked it, and they were like, "We don't like Uncle Josh in French mode," is what they said. So they were like, I think
not.
for the one time, they were like, that works, but no more French mode. Which I was using, I think, a British accent actually at the time. So
Yeah.
French mode, though.
Feels like you're a
no-go.
big theater guy based off of in your message. You also
Yeah.
gave a little.
You did.
I think
yeah,
I
a
just
little
like
impersonation.
attention. And yeah, that's more
Okay.
what it is.
We can dive deeper into that.
True to
later.
form.
I
True to
get
form.
that.
Yeah.
It's tradition here for guests to bring gifts if
Yeah.
they choose to, so
Yeah.
that they can decorate. If you're watching on YouTube, our beautiful cube shelf behind us, or if you're just listening, it is full of things that people have brought us.
Yeah.
And some of them are really cool. Some of them are really interesting. Like Matt Stefan brought us a old laundry detergent thing. But the story behind that's great.
I was gonna say,
So-
yeah.
Yeah.
It's my understanding you guys brought gifts.
Yeah. So
Ooh.
some people might or might not know that Missy Morinishi has recently
Yes.
joined Menlo staff, Mark's wife. She's wonderful. And an
She is
issue that
wonderful.
she's been running into is that her key fob around campus doesn't have full access that she needs.
Yeah.
And I had an extra key
Oh my
fob
gosh.
that does have full access. And so this is both a gift and a test to see if Missy listens to the podcast.
Oh.
Because she's only going to know that it's down here if she listens.
I was gonna say, are you just
So I've
being
got this
rude and
key
like,
fob
we're
right
just gonna
here.
put it here, and she's
No.
not gonna know about
It's
it?
a test.
That's
to see.
incredible.
Yeah.
That's
So-
a great
All right.
gift.
Yeah. Do I put it on the shelf?
You can leave
Do
it.
we do it
We can do
later?
it after. Yeah.
Yeah, you can
I'll
leave
put
it
it
there.
right here.
Yeah.
Perfect.
She'll have to
Thank you.
retrieve
I'll
it
move
while
it
the
to
while the
drink.
show is live. I think if she's listening, like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
only come and
That's
get it
really funny.
when we're live.
That's really
so,
funny.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Pleasure.
That's fantastic.
It is Christmas, and so I thought I would bring a lump of coal for Christmas. It's a very small lump of coal,
That's what that is.
but
I
this
was like, what is this?
this is not any ordinary piece of coal.
of course, it's not.
This is a piece of coal that was retrieved from the Titanic.
What?
It was actually
Stop
pulled
it.
out of the Titanic. Yes, it was.
Why do you have
this?
that?
It was gifted to me by my mentor and dear friend of mine. He had taken a trip, and I guess they had gone over where the wreckage was, and I don't know. He did some sort of like in-depth, thing where they delved into Titanic history.
He did a deep dive.
He did a deep dive.
Yeah.
So here's a lump of coal from the Titanic.
Wow.
There you have it.
It's literally from the Titanic.
It's literally from the Titanic. It says right
My
here, this
mind's
coal,
blown right now.
which is
I
a
know.
limited piece of history, remains the only authentic artifact recovered from the Titanic's wreck site available for purchase.
Wow.
Well, a new bar has been set.
And here it is.
Get
Are
a lump
you
of coal
glad
and
that Matt went after you?
I brought a key fob.
Yeah.
Missy's not
Doesn't
allowed to
sound
steal
as
this,
good.
just
Yeah.
to be clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool.
Well,
Yeah.
the good thing about this last message was that there's still hope for us all, even if you brought a key fob.
Segue.
And you're comparing yourself to a lump of coal.
Smooth.
There he is.
So we're kicking off our Christmas at the Movies series with Miracle on 34th Street, which I learned that Josh had never seen until preparing for this message.
That's right.
And that Matt has never seen the original or the remake.
The remake, the 1994.
Okay.
There's actually 2 old school black and white versions.
There's one from the 50s,
Yes,
too.
yeah. And I watched both of those, but I've never seen the 94 one still to this day.
What was the one that you worked off then? What year was that?
Depends on who you ask.
That's funny.
I thought
1947.
consensus was 47.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there
yeah.
was-
Okay.
Wow, I don't think I
Yeah,
realized
but I
there
don't
was
know
3.
if everyone
Yeah.
did that.
I'm guessing the plots were the same.
I don't know. I've
Yeah.
only seen one.
Yeah.
Well, I
Okay.
just watched the 1997 one last night. So I would
So
re-listen to
you
your
can
message.
summarize the movie
well,
for
I want
us.
to hear what you guys said because listening to your message, Josh, again this morning, I was like, there seems to be differences
Yeah.
in some of the things. So I
interesting.
think you should summarize what you watched, and then I'll tell you what was different about the 97 one.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
It sounds like maybe somebody watched it kind of with the same eyes as mine, and we're like, we got to update some
Yes,
stuff
exactly.
here. Yeah, okay. So it's Thanksgiving Day Parade, Macy's
Picture it.
Thanksgiving Day
New York
Parade.
City.
Picture it. Color hasn't even been
I need you
invented
to do
in the world
voices.
yet.
Yeah.
I wonder what it was
Those
like
might
back
come at
then.
some point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so color has not been invented yet. Santa is walking around the parade for a reason that we're not quite sure. At least I'm not quite sure based on how tuned in I was at the
That was
beginning of the
also
movie.
not clear in the 1997 movie. Like, why is Santa here?
He should be busy at this time of year.
It literally.
This is peak
yeah.
season.
And just
for
to
him.
confirm, this is literal Santa.
Correct.
Chris Kringle.
Well,
is
we
what
don't know
his
that
name
yet.
is in
Actually,
the-
but we don't know
we
that
don't
yet.
know that yet.
Okay.
So, Chris Kringle's walking around. He sees the person who's supposed to play Santa in the parade, and he is under the influence, and that will not stand.
Same as 97.
Great, perfect. Booze still exists in 1997. Apparently. Yeah, and so somebody sees him. The person who's in charge of the parade, Doris. She sees him, and she's like, "You got to do it. You look just like him." And he's like, "Well," so he does it. He does such a good job. They're like, "You got to work at Macy's and be our Santa." And he's like, "Yeah, I got time."
Yeah.
Right before Christmas. So he's the mall Santa. But kids keep coming up to him and they're like, "I want this thing." And he's like, "That's great. It's down the street at Gimbel's." Because apparently Santa in this age and time buys gifts from department stores instead of making them at the toy shop.
Okay.
It was maybe a production issue. So they go to Gimbel's. The people are like amazed at Macy's generosity that they'd send people away. And Macy's and Gimbel's are like, how do we profit off of this? We got to keep Santa at all costs. Meanwhile, he's claiming that he's the real Santa. And there are people, including Macy's has a psychiatrist who works at Macy's.
He's like early HR department, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, who gives him a test to see if he's the real Santa. But for some reason, this psychiatrist is very tightly wound. Yeah. He's really mad.
He's hostile.
He's hostile. And he's like, this guy needs to be institutionalized. He should be fired. But they don't want to fire him because they're making a lot of money off of his anti-consumerist agenda. Meanwhile, Doris, she's conflicted. She doesn't believe the powers above her, saying you got to keep her on. And her daughter, Susan,
Yep.
doesn't believe in Santa. She's a realist. She's been raised by Doris to be a realist.
Okay.
But Chris is like, this is my target. I got to help her believe in the real Christmas.
Yep.
Fred, who's their neighbor, who hangs out with Susan without Doris and Fred really knowing each other.
Yeah.
Different world, different time.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they share an apartment building together.
Yeah.
Anyways, Fred totally believes. He's a lawyer. And as this escalates, Santa, Chris Kringle, he's sent to the New York State Supreme Court, where he's at risk of being institutionalized.
Wow.
Fred represents him. The U.S. Postal Service saves the day by bringing in a bunch of letters and being like, see, Santa's real. And the judge is like, well, re-election or not, you're right. End of movie, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I mean, that's it.
Did I
Yeah, he
miss
sort of
anything?
declared Santa. I mean, there's this scene at the end with the house, but no spoilers.
Oh, yeah. The
Yeah.
scene at the end. So Doris and Fred, they don't see eye to eye on this. This is something I talked about. And they don't see eye to eye. She's a realist. He's not. But in the end, they end up falling in love.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
and
at least
then
they're
they
gonna buy a house together.
Which is Susan's confirmation that Santa is real.
Yeah.
She wished for a house
Yes.
And at the end, they find the house. Oh yeah, and this was
Yeah.
cute. His cane, right, is sitting in
Is
the
sitting
house
in
at
the
the
house,
end.
yes.
So
Yeah.
Susan knows that it was Santa who gave her the house. That he maybe bought at Macy's. Who knows how he
might
got
have.
the house?
I mean, yeah, it's possible. You can
hard to
still go
tell.
to that house. It's on Long Island, actually. It's in Great Neck.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
so
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, it's a really
Yeah.
cool little house. The cane's probably gone, though.
I mean,
You never
wow,
know.
you never
I mean,
know.
we've got Cole from the Titanic. You never know.
Anything's
what's
possible.
there.
The cane's probably still there. So there's
Amazing. Thank you.
my viewing of the movie.
Was that pretty in
It's
line?
like generically the same.
Okay.
But instead of Macy's, it's called Kohls, but not like the Kohl we know. It's Cole. Which I was like, when did the Kohl come up? Because this was 97.
Okay.
I wonder if in 1947, if there was no like, you could use any name
Yeah,
without
probably.
like patent infringement or whatever. Not
Yeah.
patent, but trademark.
Yeah. It was
don't
pretty
know.
much the same. Santa goes to jail so there's the competing store. I don't remember if it was Gimbel's though. And they want to get this Santa out of the way because he's taking all the customers to Kohls. So they take the original Santa who was drunk at the beginning to make the Kris Kringle mad. So he attacks him. So he hits it, like he takes his cane and he goes to hit him. But the guy puts his hand up, so he just hits his hand. But then he's like, whoa! And he like falls back to the ground. And there's like a photographer just happens to be there. And the two like bad guys from the gimbal store are like, you beat him. We watched you. And so he gets arrested. And that's when Fred comes in to be his lawyer. And what was the other big difference? Oh, so the way it ends is like the girl Susan gives the judge a Christmas card with a dollar bill in it. And this is the movie you guys should have used because
Yeah.
it literally talks about God. It gives a bill with or it gives a card with a dollar bill in it, and it circles the part where it says "In God We Trust." And so the whole judge is like, the whole American institution was built on this God that is invisible, but we believe in him. And so here we are with this Santa who is here and we believe in him. So they both work. And so you're free to go, basically, something like that. So, and then it did end at her wishes was to have a dad, a house, and a baby brother. And the Susan and Fred, Santa makes them get married at a Catholic church on the spot. Oh. Fred
Does he officiate?
proposes.
Santa officiates
No.
the wedding? Oh, okay.
Fred
Who's
proposes,
also a Catholic priest.
but like doesn't. She says no, and then like this happens like a week later. Santa sends both of them a card to go to this Catholic church on Christmas Eve, and the priest is there, and they start playing the wedding march, and they just get married on the spot, even though a week ago she said no. So then she's like, the next morning she wakes up, she's got Christmas presents, and she has a new dad that she just finds out about. And then they go for a drive. They get the house because Kohls gave them a big bonus so she could afford to buy this house. And then they were like, well, what was your last gift? And she turns around and she's like, a baby brother. And they're like, and that's how it
And
ends.
then like the thing. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow.
Well, that's the end of our podcast.
Yeah,
Thanks,
a different
everybody, for
take.
listening to
Yes.
Miracle Church Street Recap.
So after hearing all that, how do you even approach, like, there was the topic of hope that was kind of centered on all the talks this weekend. What was your process like, and was that a collaborative thing? And how, I'm curious to see how, I know, because I was at Mountain View at 8:30, and then I was at Menlo Park, the similarity and differences between your messages. So let's talk about how the ideas originated, and then I'd love for you guys to summarize your message, and then we can kind of see what was similar and then what you pulled out uniquely. So Matt, why don't you start?
Sure. It was a highly collaborative process, I would say.
Cool.
Each person who was involved in the teaching got to speak into the process. We met together. We talked it out. I think we really did begin with we knew that we would be preaching, be centered on this idea of hope because of Advent. And we knew that we would be doing an At the Movie series. And I think like sometimes there are instances in which if you're preaching from a movie, there can be like this cringeworthy sort of like, oh, do we have to preach about a movie? And
Right.
it was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're preaching from the text, but we're going to leverage the truth that's embedded within the movie as well and see how it complements the text. And so that's kind of the process in which we started from. And yeah, everyone got to speak into it. And so the centering principle, the centering idea was Phil put us on to this thing called the key principle. And it's like, hey, this is the thing we're going to stick to.
Yep.
The main idea, keep the main thing the main thing. And that's what we're going to preach from. And keep the text the main thing as well. And we're going to preach from that. And then gave an outline format. And then how we walk through that, we had sort of permission to deviate and have a little bit of fun. And so there were deviations there. But our takeoff, ascension, and landing were all pretty similar, I think, on how we did that. So
Cool.
Pretty consistent across the board.
Yeah. What was the takeoff? What is the ascension? What was the landing? For those that might have missed it.
Yeah. Well, I've not heard yours, so I'm. Yet.
I listened to yours on 1.75 on YouTube. So
I bet that's probably the ideal speed. With
yeah.
me.
Me too, actually.
Yeah, I take
mine's
a little
not
while
listed, so
sometimes.
I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah, I know. I want to hear it. Yeah. I'm trying to think of what the takeoff.
Well,
Yeah.
the KP was, hope, the key principle, hope requires rebellion against
Yes.
our anxious age.
That's right,
That was
yeah.
the big, teaching point. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we had, we just talked about, we opened it and then said, what is hope? Why do I need it? And how do I get it?
How do I get
We had
it?
to answer those three things. Yeah.
I remember now.
That was a softball for you, buddy.
We're busy people here. I guess.
Just you use the framework you use
Yes.
to set up the framework, like the ascension thing. I was like, whoa, he thought more about this than I did. But it was the same framework.
I have not
We're good.
ascended.
I'm not ascended. Yeah, it just sounded fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. I mean, it was a really cool process because usually it's sort of like you're kind of like cooped up working on something by yourself, and so there were definitely stretching parts of working on it all together, and that I think maybe we took a couple directions that not each individual person would, but I think it was also strengthened in a lot of ways by this collaborative thing that ideas came out that I wasn't expecting, that I'm sure you weren't expecting. So,
and I would add to that too, one of the things that happened organically, even though we didn't name it, is that every individual who is preaching, they're a part of their campus and they're a part of their context. And so they sort of know what people are thinking about, what they're praying about, what they're struggling with.
Yeah.
And so we're able to speak into that. You talked about the Menlo Park life cycle, which if you listen in, like that's only something that you could have preached about at this place. And like, that's wonderful. So while we did sort of cook it together, we naturally said, like, without even realizing it, hey, we're still going to preach from a place that feels authentic and local and connected to where we are.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So you deviated with the Menlo Park cycle. Let's give a little bit more space to that, because I thought that was a really interesting insight that you have uniquely as you're working with our students, and as you can kind of see the tensions that we can feel, we being people that might not be involved in students' lives as closely as you are. I can imagine something like that, but I thought that the framework you provided was a very great way to name what I was feeling.
Yeah. So the the life cycle essentially is that there's a kind of an intense anxiety around making sure that kids are in the best possible schooling as early as possible, which I think is a really good desire. When I have kids, I'll want them to have the best schooling possible. But it feels like this escalating tension or this escalating anxiety where it's like, get into the best school. So I even left this out. There's like an anxiety around getting into the best like private high school for a lot of families in the area.
Yeah.
Like they have to apply. I'm filling out like 1 million references for 8th graders who like shouldn't have a ton of character to begin with. They're in 8th grade.
I had to fill out a Montessori recommendation once.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And I was like, wow, what are we doing here?
Like the purpose of this is to form them. They shouldn't be formed going in. But anyways, so there's that, and then the escalating pressure to get into a great college, to maybe go to grad school, or to get an amazingly paying job so that you could possibly afford to move back to Menlo Park and make your kids do it all over again. And I talked to high schoolers about it, and I asked that question, like, don't you think there's more to life than this cycle? Do you want to be, not that there's anything wrong with being in Menlo Park. I love Menlo Park, and I think that there's so much good happening here, but if we're just caught up in that without stepping back to say, like, what is life really about, then I think we miss a lot. And it puts this crazy pressure on teenagers, especially, that I think the way that it ends up happening here a lot is you'll hear students say, my parents don't actually pressure me that much. But it's like, you know, when you're in the ocean and a wave kind of comes over the top of you and you're under the water and you're kind of tumbling around. And it's not like a wave is, at that point when you're tumbling, it's not like a wave is holding you down, but it's like you still can't get up because you're caught in the flow of it all. I think that's how students feel, is like parents aren't holding them down or holding the pressure, but they feel it from everything.
Yeah.
Like it's like, I have to be a part of this cycle, otherwise I'm broken or wrong. And that's heavy for teenagers. Yeah.
Wow.
And timely.
Yeah.
Very timely. And so as you were diving deep into the Menlo Park cycle, Matt was giving Christmas tree puns.
Well, they were names, really. They were names.
Like
I
Chris
designate.
Pine?
Oh my god.
I didn't even have that one, I'll be honest.
Okay.
It's on the list. I had Warren Sapling.
Oh, nice.
Because he was
Is
a
that
big
a
boy.
real person?
Warren Sapp was a former defensive tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Okay. These are real people.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
This
Warren
was-
I mean, I know
Sapling.
Chris Pine is real.
Yeah.
This was pulling us into your message about Christmas,
Yes.
and you were showing a slideshow of Rochelle and, was it Soraya maybe?
Soraya, yeah.
In your house in New York.
Yes.
And it was through the years of your different Christmas trees?
Yes, and our house in New York had very high ceilings, so we would get these giant Christmas trees.
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating, like 16-foot ceilings. So I cut down like a 15-foot, 300-pound tree, and it was Warren Sapling. And I have,
Oh, so you named the trees.
yes, Warren
Got
Sapling,
it.
Bark Wahlberg, Elijah Wood, and
Charles Barkley?
Charles Barkley would be a good one actually too. Oh, Spruce Lee. Spruce Lee.
Oh,
was another
that's
one.
pretty
So yeah,
nice.
yeah, he was
I
lean and mean.
hereby name my
Yes.
Christmas tree Chris Pine for
Yes,
sure.
that's actually a good
I think I
one.
want to
Yes,
put a picture of
that's a
him on the
good
top
one, yeah.
too.
You should,
yeah.
as the angel? Yes.
So yes, I did open with, Christmas tree. Getting into the Christmas spirit involves getting a Christmas tree, but I did also I was also thinking a lot about the congregation and what people are thinking about, praying about, and struggling with. And for me, thinking about Mountain View and where we're situated, we're so close to so many tech companies. You're very close to Cupertino, Apple, Mountain View, Google, and Netflix and Los Gatos. And I was thinking about the things that plague people into despair and despondency. And as I was putting this together, thinking about the conversations I've had over the last 6 months, one guy in particular was standing out to me. He's like, my manager put a 15-minute one-to-one on my calendar on Thursday afternoon, which never ever happens. And I logged onto the call, and he's like, "Hey, today's your last day. Sorry, it's not personal." And like that was like the end of it,
Wow.
after being years with the place. And like that has happened a lot this year to a lot of different
Yeah.
people. And so when you're being assailed by things that make you hopeless, how do you respond? Are you able to still find hope in the midst of it? Because if you're not, you're just going to find ways to cope.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How is hope rebellious?
Yeah, something we talked a lot about kind of in the preparation phase. So that idea came from a quote from a Christian sociologist, Jürgen Moltmann. And his quote was, hope is anticipated joy, anxiety is anticipated terror, is where that came from. And so we were thinking a lot about, like, what does it mean to live in a hopeful way in a world of anxiety, where not necessarily clinical anxiety, but more just like this kind of I can only like do it with I can show it with my body, it's this like I have to get, it's this shaky like, how do I get ahead, how do I do more, how do I get more, how do I be more, and hope really works in resistance to that, because hope says it's actually not about what I do. Christian hope it's about what God has done for me.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
in Christian hope, there's in every way that you have to strive in this world, Christian hope says actually relent and rest in the goodness of God and
Yes.
the way that he sees you. So it really is rebellious in that it is it's relenting. Yeah.
Yes, I would agree too. Also, for me, a big factor and variable that was playing into this actually comes from Star Wars. And
I
But
talked a
can you
lot
not
about Star
think
Wars
about Star
in
Wars
the
when you
process.
hear the word rebel? Like
Right.
I just immediately think of Star Wars.
and if you have not seen Rogue One, in
So
addition
good.
to Miracle on 34th Street, you need to watch Rogue One because it is the best Star Wars movie, hands down, and it's not even close. It's miles above.
Yeah.
And I'm going to spoil it, but there's this one line from Jyn Erso, female, lead, And she says this line, rebellions are built on hope. And like for me, I was like, ooh, there's power in that phrase. And the rebellion of hope says, I am not going to give in to everything that is pounding me down, grinding me down. I'm going to stand against it. It's not that I'm going to be hostile, but I'm going to find ways to resist. And instead of getting my own hopes up, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to place my hope in something bigger than myself. It's something greater than myself.
Wow.
How do you have hope when you have anxiety? And does hope take away your anxiety?
Yeah.
Probably important to distinguish types of anxiety. So, clinical anxiety, I think the recommendation is obviously like help with someone who can walk with you through that on a regular basis. That would be a hopeful step, actually, I think, in anxiety would be to work through that way. But whereas as far as the kind of like general cultural anxiety, what do you think?
I think the feeling of it, what anxiety does, it takes the things that are a problem. So suppose my hand is a problem and it's far away, and right here I can right size it. But what anxiety does is it brings it close, and it's like, whoa, and to stand against that helps you to be able to right size the issue, and not in a way that's like, I can conquer it, I can do this. It's not a thing that you're willing yourself into hope. It is a profound act of trust.
Yeah.
It is an act of trust and saying, I am believing for something bigger and greater to happen here. And I think there's even some science behind it. And I talked about it. I can't recall if you did or not in your message, but people who were finding hope. Harvard's Human Flourishing Program surveyed 13,000 people with an average age of 66. And when they were able to hope, they had better health habits, better just overall health, and there was even resistance to like disease and things like this. So when anxiety is plaguing you, it's plaguing you psychologically, it's plaguing you emotionally, it's plaguing you spiritually, and it's plaguing you physically as well. And so there are good things that help with that. There's natural, medicines and therapies and processes, and all of those things are good, but so often we discount what it is doing spiritually and how are we overcoming anxiety in a spiritual sense. And that's what this type of hope is able to do.
That's good.
Yeah.
And as we're entering into, this is our Advent series, and Advent is about the coming of Jesus, being Emmanuel, God with us. So how does that intersection of holding on to hope, where does that intersect with God saying, we want to be with you? I want to be here with you and as my people. So how in this season, as it can be such an anxious time, it can be such a rush and hurried time, how can we focus on God being with us and the anticipation of that? And how can that be one of the anchors that we hold on to as we're searching for hope?
Yeah.
I would say there's something about this season, obviously, that just forces people into the madness and the chaos. You've got the parties, the the corporate things you want to do. You've got friends, you've got family, you've got cooking or hosting or plans or gifts or things you need to be doing. And maybe first and foremost, in as much as you can, pump the brakes a little bit. Try to find ways to create margin and space to breathe is probably good to get some perspective. When I think about Advent and I think about the arrival of Jesus into our dark world, I think about today the ways in which we are no longer, as the Bible paints it, we're not a people under an oppressive regime, but we've found ways to oppress ourselves. We've found ways to oppress our souls. And so we are trying to cope with our circumstances. We are being assailed by ads and pressures and demands for our time. And we have, in more ways than one, exiled ourselves from God when we've corrupted and darkened so much around us intentionally. And so hope is recognizing that God has come to set us free and that God is with us and there is freedom within that. And so finding that space to allow that freedom and hope to grow, I think, is one of the most important things we can do. So maybe start by being mindful in this season. If you're in this season and you're on autopilot, you're finding ways to cope. It's no secret that if you're already in despair and despondency, this is a time where maybe you indulge a little bit too much in food or in drink. You find ways to kind of mitigate and medicate the circumstances around you. So pump the brakes a bit. Recognize what you're doing to cope instead of hope. And are you able to give those things up and allow the arrival of hope in your life to grow something better?
Yeah. I think that ties into a lot of what you said in your message about how technology isn't the enemy, but our appetites are.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think pulling back and refocusing on just yourself or a pause might bring to light what your appetite is, whether that is food or technology or rush or hurry or inadequacy or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Taking a time to pause and breathe might bring that to light. And then hopefully from then you can think about what next steps would look like.
Yeah. And I'll say too, if you're being plagued by something, if you're in the midst of anxiety or in the midst of despair, it's important to recognize and say, this is happening to me. And you don't forget that it's happening to you. And you don't forget that you're in the midst of it.
Right.
Where it becomes dangerous is where you say, this is a part of me, as if that were all that defined you. There's so much more for you. There's hope for you on the other side of that. And I'm concerned that when we are plagued and assailed long enough by things that are dragging us down, we say, this is who I am. And not only do we, I kind of said this in the message, not only do we develop an appetite for it where we can stomach it, eventually we might start to crave hopelessness and despondency without even realizing it. And that is a dangerous place to be. So knowing what our appetites are, what is being forced onto us, and do we have the attentiveness to say no more, or to step back from it?
Yeah. I was thinking, as you were saying that in your message, how biologically we crave what we eat. So if we keep on eating licorice for 10 days in a row, on the 11th day, like our gut biome will say, I want more licorice.
Right,
and I was like, what does that spiritually look like?
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like this, in the same way like your body will crave something sweet over time.
Yeah.
You know, you can sort of condition yourself into, sorry, random rabbit trail for a minute. I read a tweet the other day. He said, this guy was like, my buddy gaslit himself into running marathons by every time he went for a run, he put a nicotine patch on his arm. And he's like, he's on his 7th marathon now, you know?
Wow.
That's funny. But as funny as that is, there's a reality to it, right?
Yeah.
Like we can sort of force ourselves into despair and despondency without even really realizing it.
Are you
what do say?
equating a marathon with despair and despondency?
I actually think if you could get out and run, from what I know about people who run regularly, like it almost can help a lot with
it
despair and
definitely
despondency.
does.
Yeah, these
definitely
two
can.
are
Yeah.
running one this weekend.
Yeah.
We're gonna try.
We're gonna
He's
try.
Yeah,
Josh
boys,
and-
let's go.
Running's a
Yeah.
stretch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
What about you, Josh? What would you say? Where can we look to for hope this Advent season?
Yeah. I think
Jesus.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus is always the answer.
Have a great week, everybody. No, something I was noticing when I was in Alabama this last week.
Yeah.
I was on a run and I was listening to a podcast with Rick Rubin, who's a music producer / sage of the world these days. Like he has a long beard, so he has very valuable things to say. And
Shout out Keith Riley.
someone, yeah, that's right. Someone asked him, he recently had a kid. Someone asked him something that he had learned, and he said he hadn't learned anything, but what he noticed is that his child, who I think is 1 or 2, is captivated by everything, and that can be really frustrating. I was with my nieces and nephews, and one of my nephews, it's so funny, it takes him almost as long as me to tell a story. Like, it takes him such a long time. And he's just like constantly, if you watch him, there are all these like micro expressions on his face all of the time, because he's just like taking in everything always. And it slows everything down. And as adults, we're like, oh my gosh, come on. Like, we've got places to go. We've got to get in the car, put your seatbelt on. But there's actually something really incredible to practicing presence in that sort of way, where Rick Rubin said, we as adults lose that, but we can also choose to take it back, to like be present and like be captivated and captured by the beauty all around us. And I think that's something that in God being with us, like that principle extends beyond just like it is absolutely Jesus came to earth, Jesus lived and died and was resurrected, but also like God built himself into the whole world around us. He put his image in people who we interact with. And so I think there's something really rebellious about choosing to slow and to like see the beauty and to look around instead of just always looking forward.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
Any lingering thoughts? Anything else that you wish you could have included if you had more time?
I think that the tension with talking about hope is that our ultimate hope is in the resurrection of Jesus. That's like the pinnacle of Christian hope. And so when you're talking about hope at Advent season, you're trying to hold back, like, even Jesus isn't here yet, in quotes, in a way, because it's this like anticipated arrival. And so it's this like tension of like, we can't wait for him to get here. And also it's so hard not to skip to like resurrection life. I don't know about for you.
Yeah.
But I think in a perfect world, I would have loved to talk about just like the ramifications of resurrection for hope and what it means that like we as Christians believe that God is making all things new. And so how does that belief shape how we live our lives now? I think it dramatically affects everything we do. It dramatically affects the way that we see people, the way that we participate in even basic things like eating. Like, if we believe God's making all things new, that affects everything. And so if we had 2 hours, maybe I would have gone there.
Yeah. I think too, there's something about the imagery around Christmas and the songs that we sing where it seems like perfection, like, oh, sweet baby in a manger and the Magi giving the gifts and the angelic hosts and all the other things.
Little drummer boy.
Yes. Just drum solo during, Jesus trying to sleep. There's something so perfect about this season where you forget the noise and the sadness and the brokenness in which Christ came. And how even through his life, ministry, death, and resurrection, the world was still a very broken place during and after. There was hostility. I named it briefly at the end of the sermon, but I said after Jesus' ascension, you had the disciples and the followers who went on to spread this gospel, this good news to other people, and many of them paid dearly for it. Like it was still a dark world afterwards, but there are still voices crying in the wilderness for hope. There were then, and there are now. And how attentive and attuned are we to those voices bringing hope? There's an image of perfection around Christmas, but don't forget, it was still messy, it was still broken, it was still dark, and that's the world we live in today.
Yeah. I don't know if there's an answer to this question, shout out Wendell Berry, but if I'm going to talk to my neighbor and share about hope who doesn't know about Jesus, how can I translate what we talked about this weekend into a, hey, how you doing? I'm noticing some things about, this season or whatever. How are you doing? What can that conversation look like? How can we explain the ultimate that we hope as we see the Bible as one holistic picture being, in and around that culture? Yeah. How can we explain what hope is because Jesus is coming in a couple, in a conversation? What tools, what tips, what advice would you give to us as we're trying to enter into those conversations?
Yeah. I think that deep within all of us, Christian or not, there is what I called, referencing Bo Burnham, that funny feeling.
Yes.
That things are not as they should be. And I think, like you just said, Christmas is a time where we almost say we put up a poster. It's like we're in a basement with no windows and we put up a poster of a window outside and we're like, no, there it is. And you're like, no, that's not it. It looks prettier than it was, but it's not it. And so I don't know, I think if it were me, I would really focus on asking questions around that funny feeling and how someone has experienced that. Because we all experience it, Christian or not. Like, man, it's just not right. Things are not as they should be. And that feels like the start of the conversation to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
I also think the more perfect your life is, the harder it will be to realize that something is wrong.
Yeah.
Because maybe your world is very small, and that might be the hardest person to reach. But if there are folks that are in the middle of brokenness, being a faithful friend, walking alongside them, seeing what they're struggling with, talking through it, I mean, that is discipleship in a way that is really tangible, and leaning them towards the hope that Christ brings. And I think just knowing that some problems are so big, well, it could be a diagnosis, it could be anything where you're like, I don't know what to do with this. I can't do anything about it. That is the time where you can be a friend and be really super intentional and find ways to bring hope. And you'd be surprised what the Holy Spirit will do in those moments.
Yeah. I think too, I mean, talking about Jesus, I don't think that you have to explain like the full like theology and like here's exactly what Jesus did. Tim Keller talks about how the Bible doesn't really give us answers to the question of pain and like why bad things happen, but what it does make clear at the very least is that it cannot be that God doesn't care, because Jesus came to the broken world and like chose to step into the middle of it and be present in it and experience it and feel it. And so we know at the very least like he cares because he's present, and he'll make all things new.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's Emmanuel, God with us.
That's right.
That's great. So we're praying for you all. I'm praying for you too, and you, Jess, as well, of course. But also for everyone that's tuning in with us, that as we are going out into our weeks into this season, that we can really focus on slowing down. And I think that will bring up a lot of things. And if you need any prayer encouragement with that, you can text our team at 650-600-0402. Hang out with us at each campus, too. We got a ton going on.
Yeah.
I think we have a movie night coming up for students.
For families.
Families.
For
For
families.
families.
That's what it
Kids,
is.
families.
Yeah.
This Saturday, December 3rd,
The
2nd?
fourth,
Second.
second.
It's the second.
Yeah.
It's the second.
Everyone, go to
Yes.
menlo.church/events.
Yes.
That's on there. Do you want to talk about the student event?
Yeah, and then
yeah.
on December 9th, we have a Christmas broom ball event. What's so cool, if you grew up in youth group, you know what broom ball is,
Yes.
for the most part. All of these kids don't know what broom ball is. Like, I'm having to show videos explaining
That's
broom
so
ball
exciting.
Is it a video
to
game?
these.
Oh, gosh.
It's like, but do I bring my VR headset? No.
Oh, that would actually be kind of cool.
That would be
VR
kind of
broom
cool.
ball.
Yeah.
That'd be dope, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really dangerous. I
Yes.
feel like, yeah.
As if broom ball wasn't dangerous enough.
I know, right?
It'll just be kids
Exactly.
throwing up.
Yeah.
Is it on
Yeah.
ice?
Yeah, it's on
Yeah.
ice. It's great. You play with your
Baffling.
shoes. People are falling all over the place.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
I grew up going to Hume Lake Christian Camp down in the mountains, and they do a huge winter camp. They do broom ball, like a full-on tournament. And like when I was a leader, my girls got so into it. We like made shirts, and I talked in a Wisconsin accent from the
Oh,
movie
don't
Miracle.
you know? Yeah.
I'm your coach.
I'm
It was
your
like our
coach.
best thing. We got second place.
Wow.
You take all the credit.
I do take
Yeah.
all the credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And then when I was in middle school, my youth group, most of my friends, we were all on a soccer team together.
Yeah.
And we actually played broom ball, but they did it like on carpet with like actual brooms.
Oh.
But we won because it was like we're used to all playing together. We know how to play together. It was really fun.
And it
So
just
definitely try
removed
broom
like
ball.
the variables of the ice and the things that actually make
hurting
it
yourself.
challenging.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another thing this season, we have an Advent reading plan coming out. It'll start. Actually, it's on our website already, menlo.church/Christmas, and it starts December 3rd. So it doesn't 100% align with our series, but it is a great way if you needed a way to slow down and read scripture every morning. We've got those out there for you, and it's just a great way to take that moment in the morning or the night, whenever, to just calm yourself and get into the scripture.
Yep.
Yeah.
At Mountain View, do we have any Mountain View specific events that are coming up?
We're doing all this and more. We have our Help One Child
Yes.
event. So yeah, we're partnering in order to get gifts to families this year. Families in need. It's something that we do every year. Well, we work with Help One Child. The project itself is Giving Tree,
Yep.
and I mean, that is always fun to see people rally. So if you haven't yet, there's still opportunity to go to menlo.church, click events, click down to Mountain View, and you're able to still get on the list, I believe, to get some gifts going. And
And
help
Help
out
One
some
Child
families.
is foster families, right?
Did I say the wrong thing?
No, you didn't say anything.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Just if
Yes.
people want to know,
Yes, yeah,
it's
yeah.
helping foster families so our campuses all did this. They're collecting gifts so that on the December 9th and 10th, Saratoga, San Mateo, and Mountain View are all hosting shops. So the foster
So fun.
parents can come and shop for the kids.
Right,
awesome.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So I think there's probably still opportunities to serve at that event.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Menlo.church / it's Christmas / Help One Child / events. It's all, you can't miss it if you go to our website.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's a great season to come and get involved at our church as well. If you are feeling the Christmas spirit of
Yeah.
just wanting to help people, we have plenties of opportunities for you, big and small. Things like decorating campuses, all the way up to probably hosting some of these events too,
Yeah.
and welcoming people in. So,
Volunteer on Christmas Eve.
yes, things like that too. So shout out to Phil's Coffee for the coffee this morning. Shout out
And
to
Little Sky Bakery.
Bakery in Menlo Park. Any Mountain View shops that we need to shout out that you've been to
Any
recently?
Mountain View shops that we need to shout out?
1
That's
ounce
a-
is great.
1 ounce is great. Yeah. So Castro, if you're ever on Castro Street in Mountain View, there's some really great options there. There's another place, and it's messed up because I don't remember the name of it. But
dare
I'm
you.
going to describe it to you because Ethan has taken me there twice. Ethan's on my staff, and worship leader.
Yep.
And it's like it's like a place that sells plants, but they also make coffee there.
Oh,
I know. It sounds
like
kooky.
Missy's
Is it
Heaven.
on Castro?
It's on Castro. Yeah.
Oh.
And
I've heard of this.
in Mountain View.
in Mountain View.
Oh.
Yeah, and I can't recall the name of it.
Jess is
So
looking
messed
it
up.
up
Yeah,
right
maybe
now.
you can.
See if I can
But
figure
yeah,
it out.
like you walk in and you're like, there's all these beautiful, like rare kind of plants in there, and it smells amazing. And like they've got like candles and body scrub, and then they've got like a full espresso machine and some
Sweet.
really, really good coffee
Is
and
it
some great
called
combinations.
Bloom's Giving?
Yep, that's it.
Bloom's Giving.
Yeah. Yeah, Bloom's Giving.
Cool.
Really
Wow,
cool
that
coffee
looks
shop. I
gorgeous.
know. Yeah,
Yep.
Bloom's Giving. So
I've never been there.
I know. We got to take a
Well,
field
that sounds
trip.
great.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Also, big shout out to our Saratoga campus with Sam, who did our teaching there, and then Phil, who probably did a subpar job
Yeah, he's
at
not
the
usually
San
that
Mateo
good,
campus.
yeah.
So, sorry, San Mateo. You're welcome, everyone else. And also, shout out to our live audience today, Paul and Tina, that are here. If you want to come and hang out with us, let us know. Have a
Yay.
great week, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.